But what I want to do is I want to do something that's called the Gratitude Challenge. I want you to contact one person every day for the next 30 days. I want you to think about what you're grateful for about someone else, and I want you to accurately tell them. It doesn't matter if you write them, email them, none of that matters to me. What matters is that you give to them so that they don't live their lives unrewarded. Everyone say gratitude in a jar. Here's my jar. This is my jar, and I got a big jar because I have big things to be thankful for. And what I want you to do is that every time something that you are grateful for happens, I want you to write it down, and I want you to put inside the jar what you're grateful for. And then what we're going to do on New Year's Eve, I'm going to actually have you bring your jar. We are going to have a night where we are grateful. And you're going to be able to celebrate the things that you are grateful for that you put inside the jar. How many of you are grateful people?
Amen.
You're grateful? Now, how many of you have been working on your gratitude challenge? How many of you need to work more on your gratitude challenge? Isn't it true, and isn't it kind of almost telling that if we think that there's something that we're not able to find to be grateful for, that there's probably a little bit more of a problem than we thought? Maybe it is that we're just not necessarily a grateful person. You know, I want to talk to you a little bit. I want you to go with me, if you would, into the Israel of old. Whenever anyone would come up with this disease that was called leprosy, which to us is just a bacteria that an individual gets. But what would happen to a person who got that is that they first would begin with dry skin. They would begin to go after that dry skin, and it would begin to dry out so much that it would almost begin to rot. When it would begin to rot, a person's nose would fall off. A person's fingers would fall off. Their face would crater. Their extremities, their toes, their feet. It could last up until approximately 30 years. And in that 30 years, they could lose their limbs. But more than that was the emotional pain. Because the moment that it was discovered that they had leprosy, they were taken out of their homes. They could no longer be with their children. They could no longer hug their grandkids. They could no longer kiss their wives. As a matter of fact, they were people that roamed together, crying out from a distance for help. They ended up living in colonies of their own, but the stench was so bad that you could not even get near it because of the smell. And what they were told that they had to do was that they had to always stay at a distance from everyone. They couldn't come near. Let's see what the instructions to the leper of the Old Testament really were. In the book of Leviticus, chapter 13, let's begin with verse number 45. And he says this about the leper. He says, any person with a serious skin disease must wear torn clothes. Now that's the first thing that you have to do. Even if you have nice clothes, you need to tear them so everyone knows who you are. You must wear torn clothes, leave his hair loose, and unbrushed. He had to be very unkempt to be able to be a leper. He had to show the whole wide world that he was someone and something no one ever wanted to get near. He was a person that nobody wanted. He could have his wife in the distance and his children and never be able to go near them. And so here, what he did was he had his hair loose, unbrushed, and he covered his upper lip. And what he did was he walked everywhere with his lip covered, and he would say, "Unclean! Unclean!" announcing to the entire world wherever he went that they didn't want to have anything to do with him. The life of the leper, verse 46. He says, as long as anyone has the sores, that one continues to be ritually unclean, that person must live alone. He or she must live away from everyone. And it is with this background that we begin to face gratitude. We face it from a place of uncleanness. We face it from a place of discontent, or from a place of gossip or backbiting, or holding within ourselves even all of the great things people have done. But what really happened when Jesus was actually on his way in between Samaria and Galilee, walking right up the border between the two? There were 10 men that actually came to him. Go with me, please, if you would, to Luke chapter 17. And it happened that as he made his way toward Jerusalem, he crossed over the border between Samaria and Galilee. And he said, and he entered a village, 10 men, all lepers, met him. They kept their distance. Why? Because in Leviticus chapter 13, they were already told, you need to keep your distance. Everyone say, keep your distance. Keep your distance. Boy, how true. Verse 13, he said, but they raised their voice, calling out, Jesus! Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Taking a good look at them, he said, go show yourselves to the priests. Now, this is a very interesting fact. That the reason why that they went and they showed themselves to the priest was because the priest not only did the Sunday ritualistic worship, but the priest also was the head of the health department. He knew whether or not that people could come close to one another, and he would be able to be the person who then decided whether or not that a person was actually clean of leprosy. So what Jesus did was exactly what was expected. He said, now go show yourselves to the priests. And the Bible said they, on their way, what happened to them was that they became clean. Verse 15. It said, now one of them, everyone say one of them. Say it again. Say it one more time. Now one of them out of all of them. Now, what you have to really realize is this, is that Jesus believes in his people so much, he never would believe that they would not press in for the greatest benefits that they could ever get. And you're going to see that in a minute. And so here, what they did was this, is that in verse number 15, in verse 15, it says, now one of them, when he realized that he was healed, he turned around and came back, shouting his gratitude. Jesus, I'm so happy. Thank you, 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 thank you. You changed my life. Jesus, my life. Jesus, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. Your effect on my life has changed me. Jesus, I am so grateful to you. Jesus, I am so thankful. Jesus, I'm so thankful. Jesus, I'm thankful. Jesus, I am so thankful. Jesus, I'm so thankful. And not for a minute But he wouldn't stop. And so here it says that he came back and shouting his gratitude, glorifying God. And he kneeled at Jesus' feet because he was clean. He could come near. He kneeled at Jesus' feet. So grateful. He couldn't thank him enough. And he was a Samaritan. Remember, Jesus walked right up the border. And it says here, and Jesus said, were not there 10 cleansed? He said, where are the other 9? See, most of the time what we do is we get really excited about the one, and we don't ever think about the other 9. But isn't it interesting that Jesus thought about the other 9? He didn't think about the one. The one was normal. The 9 were abnormal. The 9 that should have been grateful for what happened to them. They weren't. Have you ever been caught there? When it was time for you to be grateful, but you weren't? When it was time for you to be able to release out all the emotion and all of the love and all of the care that you needed to, but what happened was that somehow, some way, it just never found its way out. So what I want to do is I want you to understand that Jesus said in verse number 19, then he said to him, he said, get up, go on your way. He said, your faith has not only healed you, your faith has also saved you. You see, there's a difference in between getting better. Do you know, there are things that happen to us inside of our lives that we get better about. You know, time heals everything, you know. Doesn't heal anything. Doesn't heal a thing. You've already made up your mind no one's ever going to treat you that way ever again. Time healed nothing. You just think you got smarter. Maybe one time you might get away with this. Never a second time. But the truth of it is that when this man came back, you know, you can be healed of something. But it's a rare thing when a person can become whole about something. So when this man came back, he not only came back and got healed, but he also became whole. Jesus said, now get up, go your way, go on home. Because your faith has made you whole. And you've heard me say it before, but it remains to be said again, that when he became whole, it was not just that all the fingers that were now gone, the bacteria stopped working against them. It was now that his fingers grew back. His lips grew back. His face. His eyes. Do you know one of the biggest things about leprosy is that male organs fall off. Nothing like having every bit of your life taken from you. And Jesus said, your faith has made you whole. And every bit of what was taken from you is now coming back. Why? Because it's something that I want you to see. Take a look at this. How does a person come to that place of happiness in their lives? Scientists have discovered that the components affecting happiness can be divided up in a life by three pieces like a pie. The first one is 50% of the pie is your natural inclination. Now, 50% of your happiness, whether it is off the charts or whether that happiness is just really small, 50% of it happens out of your natural self, or 50% is genetic. If you're happy, 50% of your happiness in your life comes from your genetics. Now, 10% comes from your life circumstances. The things that you face in life, the things that you're going through, those things that you may like or not like about what's going on. You know, sometimes you can be happy, sometimes you can be sad, and that's based upon 10% of your life circumstances. But interestingly enough, the one thing that you and I have control over is the next 40%. Because 40% is your intentional activities. The things that you do intentionally. Those things that you choose every day that you're going to do. When I run into an individual who tells me things like, oh, well, it's always going to be that way. No, it's not. It's not. The only reason why things are that way is because you're that way. It's not because things are that way. It's like the person who walks inside the church and says, comes over to the visitor booth over there, and he kind of goes and he says, well, tell me, he says, I'm new in town. He said, I've heard about this place around no matter how many places I've ever been. Can you tell me what kind of people go here? Now, you all have a picture in your mind. And, of course, you're the best church member of all of them. What kind of people go here? And someone would turn around and they would say, wow. I would ask the guy, I'd say, well, what kind of people went to the church that you just came from? Well, you know what? I didn't like them. You know, they were people. They were busybodies. They were gossips. Man, they took advantage of each other. They did things to people that they should have never done. They did all of that. And I said, well, you know what? You probably don't want to come here. You don't. Why? I said, because same kind of people go here. But the guy that was right behind him in the line asked the very same question. He said, you know, I'm new to town. He said, can you help me? He said, I've heard about this church, and I just need to know what kind of people go here to church. And I said, well, yeah, but can you tell me what kind of people went to the church that you just came from? They started crying. They said, we moved into town. I never wanted to leave. I love the people in my church. They'll always be part of my life. They were so wonderful. Look at this. Look at what they did for me. Can you see my pictures of all of the people that I knew? These are people that I loved, and I'll love them until the day that I die. They said, what kind of people go here? I said, you know, you're going to find the very same people. The people that are going to love you. The people that are going to care for you and serve you and help you through life. I know it's hard to leave something that you love, but we're going to make sure, as much as we possibly can, that you'll make the transition and never even know it. Because the difference was the person. It wasn't the people. Because honestly, you gravitate toward the people like you are. It's funny. I've watched it for so many years. People, when they're on top of things and they're very spiritual, you see them hanging around with the spiritual people. But when they're in the midst of backsliding, you see them talking to the people that already have. And it remains the same. And so 50% is your natural inclination, 10% is your life circumstances, but 40% are the choices that we make. And because they are the choices that we make, that means that I can reinvent myself no matter what I'm facing. Because of these three, the only area that you and I can touch is the area of changing our behavior, which is a whopping 40%. This 40% is the amount of wiggle room that you need to have inside your life in order to be able to reinvent yourself. I remember what Ben Bernanke said when he was the chairman of the Fed, of the Federal Reserve, and he said to a graduating university class, he said that every person that's sitting in this crowd is going to need to reinvent themselves 5 times in their lifetime. Maybe it might be for the generation that your grandparents went through. They lived and died within a couple-mile area. They knew everybody in town. Everybody in town knew them. They protected each other. They left the doors open on everything, and if somebody else needed a car, they never even needed to tell somebody that they took their car out of their driveway. Because, oh, that must have been old Bill. Bill needed a car. I know he did. Probably went to the store. Didn't say anything. Bill came back 2 hours later, and he said, "Did you get everything you needed, Bill?" You see, they grew up in a different world than we did, didn't they? And so because of that, you need to really realize that you now need to reinvent yourself. You need to remake yourself, and you do it in a particular way. Expressing gratitude is a lot more than saying thank you. Emerging research has recently started to draw attention to gratitude's multiple benefits. Take a look and see what they are. The first one is that people who are consistently grateful have been found to be happier. Grateful people are happy. The next thing that research has told us is that grateful people are more energetic. They got a lot of energy. Grateful people don't get in the stuff. They just don't go there. Grateful people are more hopeful. They experience more frequent emotions. But interestingly enough, is that they also tend to be more helpful. People who are grateful are more forgiving than people that aren't grateful. People that are grateful don't hold a grudge. People that are grateful don't remember what other people have done. Because the more a person is grateful, the less likely that he or she is to be depressed or anxious or lonely or envious. You see, there's a way for us to reinvent ourselves, and it's like this. Take a look. So here are 4 things in order for us to keep in our grateful mind. Number 1 is write in a gratitude journal. Just get yourself a little book, and all of us have something sitting around that maybe we don't use anymore because we're really stuck to our smartphones or our tablets or things of such nature. But just take a minute and write down a couple things. Write down what you're grateful for. And then every few weeks, just go back and see all of the things that happened in your life. All the things that people have done for you. If you don't write down these small things that happen with people, what will happen is that ultimately you'll forget. You'll forget those things that you've always wanted to remember. Number 2, express gratitude really in person, or express gratitude as a way of life. Many times what happens is that people don't express gratitude when it comes to others because it causes things to be so vulnerable. You become real vulnerable when you're a grateful person. You put yourself in another individual's shoes. You actually, for just a moment, make them greater than you are. And so, honestly, friends, don't keep your life from that anymore. You see, when a friend or when a client or a colleague goes above and beyond, make sure you verbalize your appreciation. Over this week, the different people that I've contacted, I've emailed, text, or phone called, each one of those individuals was so blown away that I could actually take a moment to be able to speak with them. You should read Kenneth Copeland's text to me. It was beautiful. Jerry Savelle's was wonderful. These guys were just blown out. And so my weeks are filled with these things. I'll have 30 responses. Because life is truly full of individuals that don't say, thanks very much. They don't remember what you did, but they never forgot what you didn't. And so, number 3 is respect. Respect those that are near you. Respect those around you. Treat others with the same level of courtesy that you expect to receive. Be kind to people. Each and every one of us face difficult things in life. Just be kind. Be conscious of others in your environment. One of the things that has been funny to me just of recent is that people can be in a room and not even know that you're there. They can walk right by you and never even acknowledge you. That stuff happens, doesn't it? Never do that. And then number 4, give up complaining. Decide that you don't want to complain anymore. When something happens, human beings, their natural tendency is to become complainers. They may become impatient. Have you ever gotten impatient with someone in line? I get impatient with drivers. I was impatient behind a guy today because of how much, like you didn't, right? But I was, all because he wanted to drive so much under the speed limit in front of me, right in front of me. And there was a line of people behind me. And so I momentarily was captured by the spirit of, you get out of my, I was just captured by that spirit for just a moment. And so I was impatient about that. But you have to watch out, because when that impatience causes you to be free from that individual, what you'll do is you'll try to make up for what you missed by being behind him. And usually the Lord will send you somebody in a nice white car with... So what I did was that right after I got finished with this gentleman, I then turned down this other road, and I thought, you know what, I can easily make up this time that I had, let's just say I had forfeited to being behind this individual that wasn't going the speed limit. And so what I did was I quickly actually shortened the distance between me and the car that was in front of me. And all of that worked out really well until I discovered he was a policeman. Yes, it's true. But don't think I got a ticket, because I gave them up. You can give up whatever you want. Some people give up smoking. Some people give up swearing. Some people give up whatever they give up. But I gave up getting tickets. And so, give up complaining. And instead of complaining, what you need to do is that every time that you want to complain, give a shout out for someone that you're thankful for. Take a look at this. See, when you want to complain, sometimes you just got to shout it out. Gratitude. The question is, who are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? Who's done something in your life that is going to knock you out of the pattern that we seem to fall into? Because when things become the same old, when they actually become routine, we fall into a place of ingratitude. And we begin to focus on us rather than focusing on others. So today, I guess that all I wanted to do was to once again encourage you to be grateful. Last week we talked about how that we wanted to be grateful for a person every day. And that gratitude needed to be specific. It needed to be sincere. One of the terms that I learned over the years was, I sincerely love you. And if you ever see me write that, you'll know that I really focused on that and I really mean it. Because people can say all the time, they can tell you that they love you every day, but people, they use love like, like it's potato chips. It's like, hey, I love you, man. It's like, hey, got some chips. I mean, it's the same, it's just kind of the same thing. But whether it was that people began thinking all about the people that have meant so much to them, and they sat down and they wrote something about them, and then called them on the phone, and then they read it. Or whether it was that it was somebody on the street, somebody that you could just be thankful for. Someone that now you didn't really even have to see. It was someone that you could talk about. Whether it was a colleague, whether it was a friend, whether it was somebody at work. I remember one time that I had written in one of the books that we had done in my dedication page. I said, and I want to dedicate this book to all of my enemies. Because without them, I've never could have become the man that I am today. See, even my enemies. Somebody said, well, yeah, but don't you think something, man, are you kind of like, you would never say anything like really about the devil. Well, I really would, except for one thing is really true about him. He's a persistent guy. He's very persistent. So I want you to continue every day. If you need to catch up, now you need to remember, this is all telling about who we are. Because you really have to work on it to tell somebody how grateful you are, don't you? You've got to work on it. And let me mention one of these things that go along with it. When someone is kind and gracious to you, you need to respond in kind. Do you understand what the term in kind means? Do you understand? Who does not know what in kind means? Okay, does everyone know? Okay, let me tell you what it means. When you respond in kind, that means that you respond to the very same depth of the way that a person has spoken to you. It's like somebody will bare their heart, and then someone will turn around and they'll say, okay. And you go, the courage and the vulnerability that it takes for someone to tell you their heart needs to be treated with the same intimacy level as it was spoken to you. Well, yeah, but I just don't like that kind of stuff. Well, it's time to get over not liking it. I didn't say you have to love it. I said in many of our cases, me included, I have to get over it. Something you get over. If you didn't hear words of love all the time when you were a child, you reject them when you're an adult. Ladies, is that true? Yeah, so I want you to keep that in mind. Be grateful. In everything, give thanks. This is the will of God. Show with your actions that you're grateful, not just with your mouth. Be sincere about what you do, that your actions and your words are identical in everything you do. This week, what you're going to be seeing is that you're going to be seeing coming from me and going out. And you're going to see my team actually coming around and maybe just wanting you to actually give a shout out to somebody. You know, I just want to give a shout out. I'm grateful for, I'm grateful for, Pete Johnson. If I'm sure there is a Pete Johnson somewhere. That I'm grateful for Pete Johnson. Pete Johnson, this is what you meant to me. And I just want to let the whole world know how grateful that I am for what you've done. Just giving Pete a shout out. Because I believe that if what we do is that we can show people how grateful we are, then that can go across the globe, and that gratitude will then make us whole. I'm just not searching to be healed. I'm searching for wholeness in every area of my life. Let's bow our heads and pray. Say, Jesus, without you, I could not know God. It was the payment that you made for my sin that gives me an entrance to know the Father. Now, Lord Jesus, soften my heart. Cause me to think like you think. Cause me to love like you love. Transform me today into a new person. And may your gratitude overtake my life. In Jesus' name.